Hello and welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
I'm Dave Candido.
We're coming at you with 1998's Blade, which I kind of thought about this. It technically is probably the start of the golden age of what you would say superhero movies. Now, granted, I know that X-Men's the one that kind of gets the big credit for it because when Blade did come out, not everybody knew that it was a superhero thing.
Yeah.
You know, I just knew it because I was like, oh, he has like an episode or maybe two episodes. I think it's a two-parter episode in Spider-Man, the animated series. So that's where that was really the only place I knew Blade from myself. I never saw anything else beyond that.
I actually saw that years after seeing Blade 2, which was the first Blade I'd seen was Blade 2. Mm-hmm. And in Spider-Man, the animated series, I remember an episode that I caught like one day by chance. And kind of a funny episode. Blade is drawn like a white guy. And like as the episode progresses, he becomes like different every time you see him. I think what happened was the artist like didn't know that Blade was black. And like, I don't know, like maybe somebody's like crossed his desk and was like, hey, by the way, here, like take a look at the source material. And like the texture, I'm pretty positive if I remember right, the texture of his hair changed and the like the skin tone like got darker and darker. It was kind of
before
funny.
I think somebody they're like, oh, he's a vampire, of course he's gonna have light skin, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I had no idea for a long time that Blade was a comic book character or a Marvel character. But
yeah,
I think it's pretty awesome. It's
yeah, no, but it is
one of my favorite.
So that's what I
Marvel
mean. This one
characters.
sort of slides in right before, you know, X-Men. Because I was kind of thinking about it even today. I was like, you know, because really, you could say that the golden age starts with Blade and X-Men and carries forward. And I was thinking, like, well, what would be the silver age? Well, I'd say the silver age would be Superman 78 all the way up to Batman and Robin, I would say. Because Blade comes right after Batman and Robin, and it literally shifts the tone from, like, you know, one to another, just hardcore. And then I'd say the Bronze
movie.
No, not a family movie, and it's treated seriously. I think that's what makes Blade pretty cool. It's like right off the bat, it's, you know, I mean, they do kind of hide the fact that it's a comic book movie. Like when you're watching it, like unless you like, you know, catch Stan Lee's name or anything like that, like the average viewer, that's just going right over their head, you know. Where if this movie came out, you know, 10 years later, you know, they would shove that Marvel logo in your face right at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think the only other real serious Marvel films had to have been the Dolph Lundgren Punisher. Well, pretty much just the Punisher films.
Yeah.
And I think the least serious out of those, if you can even say it, that not being serious, has got to be the one with Tom Jane. That seems to be the most lighthearted, if you will, Punisher that I've seen.
Comparatively.
Yeah. I haven't seen the one with Ray Stevenson all the way through. I watched it on
Warzone?
TV.
Yeah,
and
that was my favorite Punisher one. I love the Living Daylights out of that.
Okay. And I haven't seen the one with Dolph Lundgren either.
Oh, really?
Once again, I've only seen sections of it. It was like one of those ones that I caught on TV, and by the time there was a commercial, I think I had to get up and leave or something. But I love Dolph.
Yeah. Well, I'll say the Dolph Lundgren one, it's like, it you know, for 89, you know, you got to go kind of back then and so on like that. It is kind of a simpler Punisher. And of course, he doesn't really have the shirt on or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, but like if you just take it for what it is and like when it is, it's actually a pretty cool movie. And I always like that one quite a bit. And that's like that. There's that little pocket window where they tried a couple of Marvel movies right then at the late 80s.
I think Howard the Duck was one of them.
Well, that's DC.
I'm pretty sure Howard the Duck's Marvel.
Oh, no, you're right. You're right. Take it back. That's Marvel, but that was done by George Lucas. That's, you know, or like not George Lucas himself, but this George Lucas's, you know, company.
Lucasfilm?
Yeah, Lucasfilm did that. But then you also have, so you have Howard the Duck, you have Punisher, you have Captain America in like 1990.
Yeah.
Which I was, as a kid, I used to watch the Living Daylights out of that. I thought that one was amazing. You know,
you could have told them.
Well, there's those 70s ones too. So
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so there's in the 70s they made some made-for-TV ones, but in 1990 there's actually a Captain America movie.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of those ones. It's probably one of the I couldn't just recommend to anybody else.
Yeah.
You probably had to be there because this one's it starts
You have
off
to
really badass.
appreciate, yeah.
Captain America's battling, Red Skull and everything like that. It looks fantastic. And then next thing you know, like the movie's like Captain America driving around in a Fiat for like 90% of it, which tells you it's probably made in Italy.
Yeah.
But then they also had the Fantastic Four movie, the Roger Corman version in that time period. So they had those there, and weirdly enough, Blade was actually thought of at about that same time period. They thought about doing like a Blade with Richard Roundtree, who was the original Shaft, which actually would have been really badass like that anyways.
That would have been pretty cool.
And then I think in like 1992, there was supposed to be like an LL Cool J version, and of course
boy.
it went through a couple other people too.
I can think of a lot of dudes that would have made an awesome Blade, but I can't think of, post-production. I can't think of a better Blade than Wesley Snipes after the performance that he's done. And I'm sure that a person's opinion might change after seeing, going Blade 1, 2, 3, and then even the cameo that he has in Deadpool Wolverine, but which I thought was great. I'm sure Wesley Snipes was, not upset to be asked to reprise his role. But no,
that was one of the most exciting parts of that movie.
For sure.
When Wesley Snipes appears in there, I got so excited.
For sure. No, that was a lot of fan service in that film, but I didn't mind at all. It was, I think, necessary for all the silly things that have happened in the last decade or so with Marvel.
Yeah,
but
it was the right place for all that.
Refreshing.
And it was that love letter to all like the superhero movies that literally built up, the groundwork to get to where Marvel is today.
Oh yeah, but yeah, the original Blade. This was actually the first time that I've watched it uninterrupted and not just on TV. Like not a TNT afternoon, showing or something, FX special. No, this was the first time I watched it uninterrupted and unadulterated. And what an awesome film. I think we've talked about it before, like the state of the film industry, how things are kind of seeming to be, at least as far as I can kind of picture it, things seem to be regurgitated a lot nowadays. It seems like a lot of ideas just aren't popping up. People are making remakes and reboots and this and that. So going back and watching this movie, which I thought was fantastic. Not a family movie like we were saying. Not very much unlike MCU.
Yeah,
I wish there was like still another part of Marvel films. I guess it would be Sony, but even that is the Sony Marvel films to me feel like MCU from Wish.
Yeah, they are definitely the off-brand Marvel films for some reason. I don't know.
It's kind of strange. The last few Sony Marvel films I really liked were the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies.
I like those ones a lot, actually.
I know that Andrew Garfield got some flack.
He's my favorite Spider-Man. I kid you not.
But I thought it was fantastic. I remember seeing a post from somebody, this was years ago, talking about, they made Spider-Man a hipster, and I'm like, I don't even understand why that comment exists. Like, a hipster? He's just Peter Parker. He's a teenager.
No, I felt like what I like about the Andrew Garfield one is that like they don't make him like like tripping over his own balls like fucking nerdy. He's still nerdy and stuff like that, but he's just a little bit more attitude. You know what I mean? He's got the.
He's not a nerd from the 50s and 60s. He's a nerd not a nerd, but he's kind of an outcast still in a way.
Yeah, he's almost a little bit like slightly punk rock Peter.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I love that. This is the kind of film that I really miss seeing. Like they don't make films like this Blade anymore. And what I mean is, you got a lot of great elements in the film. You got the action, you got the horror and gore, because what a gory movie it is, and then
violence.
A few little elements of humor in there, like not Thor level humor, but like.
Yeah, not dumb slapstick, like, take you out of the experience type thing.
I was trying to think of something to compare it to, but it doesn't matter. It's just it's got a few jokes in there that are appropriate.
Yeah, they work in the world and so on like that.
But no, I'll let you lead us through what the the premise or whatever. I don't know, but whatever.
Well, first I was just because it's been a moment since I've seen the Blade movies as well too. Like I think the last time I watched them was in the 2000s. And that's just kind of how it goes. It's like next thing you know, it's like it's been 15 years. You're like, shit, that's how long it's been since the last time I saw this movie. There's just so many things to watch and rewatch and so on. It just kind of happens. But I've been wanting to talk about Blade forever on the podcast, so that's why I'm so glad we did it. But one thing I kind of thought about too, there's a couple things actually I noticed. One, this is a New Line Cinema. I kind of forgot this was New Line Cinema. So this adds, because mostly you think of like, okay, who sort of generally had Marvel back in the day? It was Sony and Fox. That was the two main ones in a sense. And Sony always had Spider-Man. That was the big thing that they had. Yeah. And of course, Fox had like the majority of all stuff. For some reason, I actually, in my mind, if you would have asked me this like 2 weeks ago, I would have told you this was a Fox movie. That was what I thought it was off the top of my head. And then the fact, I mean, it makes kind of sense that it's a New Line Cinema, but at the same time, it's like, I didn't realize, like, oh, I guess New Line has that. Well, because then, Lionsgate has the two Punishers in the 2000s, and they might have a couple others. So, but see, and I personally am one of those people that I liked when almost like the Marvel stuff was slightly split up, because the thing is each movie studio, at least if you don't like one style, that's okay, because another movie studio might give you something different. Where the downfall is when we all have Disney, it's like that mouse is dictating everything.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think there's anything more diverse than comic book characters. Mm-hmm. Even if your favorite characters are all white, even if your favorite characters are all women, it doesn't matter. Like every superhero is different in their own unique way. For the most part, like there's a few knockoffs here or there.
But there's always like in Marvel and DC, you can always tell like when there's just like certain characters. Well, that was just like they're like, well, we can make our own version of that.
It's like there was the original Captain Marvel and then Nova. It's like
and Namor and Aquaman. Come on, they're so similar, but
so like it does make sense for a certain studio to make a movie for a certain character versus another. That I just never thought about it, but yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think it should all be limited to one, but I mean, that's the world we live in. Disney owns Marvel,
monopoly.
And, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's such kind of a bummer, but in a sense, like it was like perfect examples. New Line Cinema, I think, is a great place for Blade to be, especially at this time period, because New Line was kind of the younger, hipper company. I mean, it gave us everything from like Ninja Turtles to Spawn, and of course, at this time, it's like they kind of can make it. And they can make it very adult themed, and it's not like it's questioning anything. And even though it is the '90s, like, hey, this one's coming in hard R, here we go. And the other interesting thing I was thinking too is this movie's 1998, which means it predates The Matrix. Yet it has a lot of stuff in it that like creates
very Matrixy.
Yeah, it's all that stuff that because I always used to refer to I always think Matrix is what creates that whole genre from like 99 to about 2006 or 7. It goes for a while there where everything gets like that hard kind of, everyone's wearing black trench coats, the color schemes toned to like something. Underworld's a perfect example. The Resident Evil
I was actually thinking of Underworld just a moment ago when I was thinking of other movies that kind of have the same feeling. And it's funny. Underworld, Matrix, first Resident Evil, where everything
Equilibrium, Aeon Flux. There's a lot of them that are kind of in that style. But it's funny because like now I think about like Blade is actually the forerunner of all that stuff. Yeah. It's got the black trench coats. It's got like the techno disco dancing type music going in there too. The sunglasses, like all just the stylish mixed match of like sci-fi horror, Hong Kong kung fu type stuff all in one.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt the same way, and it's weird. It's definitely, you get a lot of nostalgic feelings watching this movie and the movies that are similar to it, which is nice in a way. And gosh, I started thinking about that too. You brought up the dancing, the techno dancing. The first movie that actually came to mind, which is after I believe the other movies we talked about, but Triple X.
Yes.
It just, I started thinking about the Slavic dancing club.
It's got Rammstein playing.
Exactly, yeah. And there's like, I always love how, and this happens in, I was actually kind of pleased to see this kind of thing happen in the last John Wick film too. Either the last one or the one before it. I think it was John Wick 3, where all these people are just oblivious to this horrible crap going on. Like people gunning each other down or beating the crap out of each other in the middle of everyone dancing. They're just like, yeah, this is a great place, great time. And I'm thinking, well, that's probably because of drugs. And in the case of Blade, the very beginning of Blade, where this random ding dong guy is just being drug along by this attractive woman through a freaking meat factory, and he's just like, oh wow, look at that, wow, like,
yeah,
like,
not questioning it.
What are we doing here? Like, what? This is weird. I'm out of here. I've left. I would leave for simpler reasons. But yeah, brings him to this dance club, and be like, this is not just a dance club, is it? I mean, if it was I'd be thinking at the very least it was an organized crime hub, but no, of course it's just where this big huge coven of vampires are at, big huge hive, and starts raining blood through the sprinklers and all this. And I started, of course, like working trade work, the first thing I think of is how they do that, why. I mean, how do you get blood in the sprinkler system and that
without
much?
Getting clogged. It must be watered down a bit. That was the only thing I could think of.
Put some anticoagulants or whatever it is.
Yeah, who has to clean that up afterwards?
Yeah.
Those pipes, the fittings, all that stuff, they're all going to be clogged.
But yeah, and apparently that girl who drug him in there, I think Blade kills her. Because Blade shows up, this guy's like screaming for his life because he realizes not long after showing up that they're all vampires and they want to eat him. And I thought it was kind of funny. You'd think you'd see a few more people in there, normal humans, because there's like, I don't know, 100 vampires in there, and one guy. It's like, what are they gonna like divide it up like sushi? Like it's like sushi at a freaking wedding rehearsal. Like, and but no, it's just this one guy, and the rest of them are all vampires, and he's just like bouncing off of each and every one, like and then they start like beating him up on the floor, if I'm not wrong. But he's definitely soaked in blood, and then Blade shows up, and they're like, oh, what, and
it's the Daywalker.
Yeah, they fight him to no avail. He just kills all of them, a good amount of them.
Well, he just goes in and just kicks ass and takes names. Like, no problem whatsoever.
And I love the you still see this in some films here or there, but I love how 90s and 2000s, probably in the 80s too, but I can't reference anything. You see props of actual guns that are modified to do really peculiar things or silly things. Like in his grip of his shotgun, he's got 2 slots for silver stakes. And all that thing does is rack the shells, but somehow they're shooting silver stakes. And, again, as an avid shooter, I'm like, how's that working? But then I'm like, it's a movie, man. That's how, Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. It's some prop man. He just saw those, like, clip holders on there and said, yeah, I can do something with this.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And one thing I love, too, we were going into the era of, like, everything being chrome. You know what I mean? Like, that early 2000s where everything is silver. Everything is bright and smooth and like
slick.
Liquidy. Yeah. The everything that he has that's not black is just like pure silver. Like like in color, like nothing matte finished, nothing not shiny. And I don't know, I just love it. It's a blast from the past.
Well, that's why I always think this kind of era, and I'm going to say 98 to, about mid 2000s. Because a lot of times people would be like, oh, the 2000s doesn't have anything that really stands out. I'm like, no. These type of movies is like, that's like a look that stands out just as much as 80s movies do, just as much as 60s movies do. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very, very unique pocket window.
You just got to be paying attention.
Yeah, that like they don't make movies at all like this anymore. And it would be interesting if there's a resurgence to this ever, Because even like that Matrix 4 even felt like, I didn't
even watch that.
It's kind of stretched from it. I don't know. It was a mixed match one. I will say it wasn't bad, but it wasn't really great. It was like you just kind of had a lukewarm feeling. I felt like I liked it a little bit more when I first saw it, and then it kind of petered off the more I kind of thought about it.
I just I guess this is just another case of somebody needing to give something a chance. That somebody being me, and the something being the Matrix 4. But my initial thoughts were, why is there a fourth movie? Like, they ended things in the third one. Like,
Yeah.
what? But again,
The money was too good.
somebody had an idea. Yes, somebody also wanted to make money, but you know, there's an idea there somewhere. And
if I'm not mistaken, it was
kind
kind of like only one Wachowski was sort of like the main one on it. It was like it was like one kind of really wanted to do it, and then the other one was maybe barely there on the credit. I just remember just seeing it was like, yeah. So I don't know. It's not terrible. It's definitely worth. Or I'm not gonna say it's worth. It's, you know, if you watch it, it's worth the time. But yeah, it doesn't take away from Matrix 1, 2, and 3. You can just leave that trilogy as a, you know. I love 1, 2, and 3. So
yeah, no, same. But yeah, so what's the first antagonist that you see that I love this kind of villain. I feel the same way about Grievous from Star Wars, and I can't think of any others at the moment. But I love this type of villain. Quinn, the vampire Quinn. Mm-hmm. You know, the guy is dastardly. The guy is annoying. You think he's gonna die, and he doesn't. You think, you know, he's gonna just be pathetic, and you think he's gonna be pathetic enough to be, you know, just like wiped out, but he's not. He's a freaking parasite of a vampire. He's a parasite of a character, and he just keeps sucking blood, you know, and throughout the dang video, and you can't just get him out. And so that's who Blade kind of. He didn't really interrogate him, I don't think. I think he was meaning to kill him. And then the cops bust in, and after the big fight, that Blade saves the guy who was about to get eaten, kills a bunch of vampires, and then uses silver stakes, basically crucifies Quinn on the side of a wall and lights him on fire. Super brutal. And
I just love, because that scene, he leaves there's the one human dude who got drug into this, and he is left there on the floor covered in blood. A dude is burning on a wall next to him, and about 5 police officers come in. I'm surprised they didn't just shoot him right there.
Oh, I know, right?
Talk about being left for dead.
Please.
Yeah, they bring him like a blanket or something like that. Like, how do they know?
I know.
And too, where did these police officers come from? Like, I was kind of wondering that too. It's like, some underground speakeasy club, obviously not safe enough.
Exactly. So I think I'm going to guess that these police officers, because you learn later on that, you know, people know about vampires. I think the majority of stupid civilians, you know, don't know about vampires, but a lot of people do. It seems like people of authority know about vampires in this Blade universe established in the film, and a lot of them are basically on vampires' payroll, and with probably being paid money and having a false promise of like not being eaten, you know. So I'm kind of guessing that those cops that busted in were probably like liaisons or just like pals, you know what I mean, like paid pals, and to go in there and try to kill Blade. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then of course they bring Quinn into the hospital because he's burning to death. That's another thing, actually. Maybe my theory on that's wrong, because why would they then bring Quinn into the hospital if they knew he was a vampire?
Yeah, exactly. I think that they somehow, some way, maybe Blade tipped him off. I'm not too sure, but
probably just plot.
Yeah, they're just there just to get Quinn in the hospital. He's a burnt corpse now, you know. And I think that's they just need to get that there. They just need to get from point A to point B, and just don't worry about what happens in between.
Yeah.
You know? But they get him to the hospital, and this is where we get our female lead characters introduced. And she's got like some like ex-boyfriend that she clearly still works with, so you know, it's one of those ones. You know, he's there, you know, he's trying to be friendly and so on like that. She's like, whoa, you know, no more dates, no more nothing, you know. But that's okay, because this corpse is going to come back to life and take out her ex-boyfriend anyways.
I just realized. So, jumping way far ahead real quick, you see him again.
Yep.
And he doesn't die.
No. He's just
that guy doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
That guy's just suffering somewhere in a pit. Anyway, yeah, the female lead, Quinn, of course, in the hospital, burnt to a crisp, but not dead because he is undead and wasn't fully killed. Jumps up and kills the doctors in there and goes after
Dr. Karen.
Karen, yeah, I forgot her last name, but it doesn't matter.
Karen Jensen.
Yes, and goes after her, bites the crap out of her neck. And oh, you know what? We totally forgot. The very first scene in this movie actually wasn't the dance club. It was the scene of Blade's birth.
That's right.
Of which is pretty obvious that it's Blade being born. But you learn like 20 minutes later that, Blade was born a vampire. His mother was bitten prior to giving birth, and then she died, and he lived.
Yeah,
and he's half vampire, half human. He's got all their strengths and none of their weaknesses, except for he kind of still does need blood now and then.
Yeah, he still needs to have, his buddy Kris Kristofferson, who's, the expert vampire hunter from ye olden days.
Exactly.
Like, literally here to take care of him and run experiments and shoot him up, with pseudo whatever kind of fake blood that keeps him going. Yep.
It's kind of hilarious too. They bring we'll get to this later. I'll hold off on that. So Blade, in a moment of mercy, I guess. I feel like it would have been more merciful to just kill her. But Blade's there. I guess he was tracking down Quinn when they took him and brought him to the hospital. So he shows up at the hospital to kill Quinn. And
because he busts in there. He's like, I've come back to finish you off, because the cops got in the way.
Yeah, and then he sees Karen there, all messed up. And he takes pity, I guess, or he just like wants to do her. I don't know, one of the two, and decides to kind of rescue her and bring her back to Whistler. Gosh, I've got Fable on my mind. And take care of that. Well, this was another part of the movie that right before he goes back to Whistler with Karen in the hospital, he's trying to finish off Quinn, and cops once again bust into the scene, and start shooting. And Blade turns around, motherfucker, are you serious? I'm like, not a family film. And and it was just so perfect. And that's one of those like, that was funny moments, but it wasn't like over the top, like
it
slapstick
wasn't goofy.
Yeah, exactly.
What part that was hilarious though is when they're escaping that hospital, and Blade goes to the window and he sees like literally probably like a building across the way and probably down 15 floors or so. He's like, wow, that looks like some nice soft cardboard, and just chucks Karen, and she flies way far out there and then bounces off what we presume is soft cardboard. For all we know, it could have been a bunch. Yeah, it could have been a bunch of like, wooden and crates out there or something like that. She gets impaled on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was hilarious. Like I laughed my ass off right there, and explained to my wife too. I'm like, it's funny because it's ridiculous.
Like, how does she survive? How does Blade chucking himself out there is already like, I was like, okay, he's got powers or something like that. I don't know who anybody else who could just be chucked across a building.
Oh, I know, right? We see that again too, a little later on, like halfway through the film, I think. But yeah, that was great. And then I love it where once again, how do the cops get over to him so fast? Because he jumps way over to another building, and then I guess cops come up through the like stairwell or whatever and up onto the roof or whatever to pursue them, but. I love how she's like, oh, my shoulder's dislocated. All I'm thinking is like, how is your freaking spine not dislocated? Like, how are you okay?
Yeah.
And it is what it is. It's hilarious. But he,
Mine's like one of those ones that it must have been in the script like that, and it was like probably in writing. It's like, yeah, sure, and probably in the dude's mind, it's like, yeah, it's like maybe she's thrown like one story over or something like that, nothing too far. They didn't expect to be like, oh yeah, he's gonna really have to chuck her.
I could see like the director and whoever the set designer are standing there, like the director's like, really, like. All right, we're just gonna roll with it, like
just are you in or are you out kind of thing, here we go.
Yeah, then brings her back to Whistler. He tells her the origin, blah blah blah. They kind of give her the temporary, like this will slow down the infection injection, and she basically goes on the case with Blade against his wishes, and they give you the little shots here and there that are kind of the character building, where she wakes up in his, I guess, bedroom in this like factory looking place that him and Whistler live in. Sees a picture of his mom, his little knickknacks and shit. Touches his sword, which all of a sudden shoots out the little spike things that will like destroy your hand if you try to use his sword. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then, and then they basically give her the rundown of everything that's going on. She tries to escape, but Whistler stops her. Whistler and his janky ass leg chases her down. I always think that shit's hilarious. But he, they tell her what's going on, and then she decides, okay, I'm in this with you, and I love how he like doesn't put up a fight about it at all. He's just like, no, you can't. Like she's like, well, yes, I can. He's like, all right, fine, that's fine. And I think it's right after he cuts her loose, but to use her as bait, and she goes back to her apartment. A police officer shows up. There was a couple of other vampires there too. I can't remember if they were trying to get her as well, but the cop tries to get her. He fails. Blade basically comes in and beats him up. Then he escapes again when they're at his car, and then he waits. Tells the girl. It. Yeah, tells
and
the girl.
That cop's like, he's not a vampire, but he's a familiar.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he's like one of their like lackeys, and then he escapes again. Goes to the main villain, Quinn's superior, who I love the dynamic between Quinn and
Stephen
Frost.
Dorff plays this dude, which actually that's a great actor who like he's only in like it feels like I can think of like movies from like 94 to like 2004, and then you just never seem to see him too much anymore.
Stephen Dorff. Yeah, I don't know.
Have you ever seen the movie Cecil B. Demented by John Waters?
No.
He's like the main character in that one. That movie is really cool. There's a few other ones. I just remember like at this time period, I just remember being able to find just a handful of movies that he would pop up in. And I was like, oh yeah, he's the main villain of this one here too. And he looks kind of 90s as fuck in his design. Just the haircut and everything.
Yeah, so Frost, the main villain, is introduced. He's actually introduced, I think, in a scene or two. I think he's got a couple scenes before Blade.
Well, and I think he owns that nightclub.
Yes, yeah.
Because there's a couple scenes where it's like the vampire council.
Yeah, they got like this cabal of vampires.
And there's just all these, rich people and stuff. They're like, they're looking at Mr. Frost. You have failed, and now you have made us seen to the public. One of
You've
those
made us very, very angry.
Yes,
now we will send you a very we will send you a very unflattering letter, or whatever the hell. Like it made me think of Team America when the
oh yeah,
Han shows up to tell Kim Jong-il that they don't approve. The United Nations doesn't approve. Yeah.
And then, of course, Stephen Dorff's just like 90s attitude. He's just sitting there like, what, man? Like, we're vampires, bro. Like, literally, we should be like running this shit, They're fucking cattle. Let me tell you, we're at the top of the food chain. He's just sitting there like 20. Literally, it reminds me almost like Dr. Evil's son. Fucking
kind of, yeah.
Tell him how to run things.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like. From that point, from the first scene that you see with him, Frost, and the vampire, basically like the elders, all the way till the end of the movie, it's kind of funny. So those guys are all like born vampires, and they're like ancient vampires, and Frost was bitten by a vampire. You would think that they'd be like immensely more powerful than him, right? You know, like it's kind of silly what happens to all of them versus what happens to him. But anyway, so you do see him. He's introduced with this like cabal of vampire leaders, born vampires. They don't like him. They think he's reckless, young idiot. He runs these nightclubs, and they're like, oh, you know, you're attracting too much attention, blah, 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 blah. And he's saying, just like you were saying, you know, like, oh, you know, we should be running all this. And you see this in other vampire stories, movies, games, whatever, where there's one vampire. It's funny to think of a renegade vampire, right? It's funny to think about that, but he's kind of like, he's got that same idea, like exterminate the humans, you know, like vampires only. But it's like, well, how are you going to eat, man? You know, like you can't exterminate them all.
Yeah.
But what do I know? I'm not a vampire. So yeah, it ends up where that police officer that tries to nab Karen gets beat up by Blade and escapes like 2 more times. He ends up going back to Frost because that's who he reports to, him and Quinn. And going back on Quinn being his more or less Frost lackey, they're like they have an interesting dynamic, and he seems like a very I had the idea that Frost was gonna just like kill Quinn like at a moment's notice, but he actually keeps, because usually movies like this you got 2 villains, one of them who's loud, obnoxious, always like, you know, yeah, what he said, yeah, you know, repeating what they say all the time. And eventually the guy's just like, you know what?
Boom.
I'm sick of you. And but Frost actually keeps him alive.
Like the whole way. Like you keep thinking there's moments in this movie where it literally feels like, oh, he's just going to finish him off and something like that. It doesn't.
Yeah, I know. Which is I can appreciate, because I don't know if I've seen many movies where that actually is, you know, has that dynamic between the 2 villains. Unless they're like, you know, brothers that have this bond that's unbreakable, whatever. But no, Quinn's just a big loud idiot, dangerous vampire, but not on the level of Frost. And that's their whole thing. They've what Blade discovers with Karen through their, you know, vampire killing detective work is that Frost has this plan. This prophecy to call forth this like blood god and become something super powerful or whatever, and exterminate humans and blah blah blah. And I love this scene with basically Blade and Karen find this out, like a piece of it. It's where they find you know, like they don't know what they're looking at. Kind of funny. It's like a digital, like I don't know what you call it, like a plans for this whole like event,
okay.
You know, like this ritual, if you will. And I'm just thinking, like, why is this digitized? I mean, like,
why is there this CG like rendering?
But the vampire that they roll up on is like Jabba the Hutt of vampires. This big giant plop of mass that has the tiniest, shriekiest, nastiest voice too. And it was just hilarious.
It's funny. I was listening to the special features on the movie, and they said that they put like $7,000 worth of silicone to make that guy.
Oh my God.
And it took 5 people to run the whole thing. Like, you know, one person ran an arm, the actor had his head just poking through, the other person ran another arm and the gut and everything. Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive special effect, because it is fucking like disgusting. It's just white and nasty and just sitting there, probably hasn't washed himself in fucking weeks.
That is so much money to dump into one thing like that. And I would imagine the director, like, and the producer probably like, oh, I hope this movie makes money, you know, like for crap like that. But
yeah, you got to think about, well, realistically on a movie, I guess $7,000 comparatively to, like, you know, the millions that's going to cost for everything else, I guess. But still, $7,000 for one fat guy, you know, it's, you know what I mean? It's like, just go find somebody on My 600-Pound Life and set him up here.
But yeah, that was that's how they discover what Frost's plans are, and they're not quite sure what it is, and they bring it back to Whistler. Before that, though, I love how they interrogate this big, ball of vampire mass. They have this UV light it looks like a piece of crap that Whistler put together, but it works great. Like it's just frying this guy, and he gets Karen burns him to death. He's sitting there squealing, and then Blade. That's where Blade and Frost finally see each other on a. Not face to face, but through an intercom, basically, or like what we're doing right now, and then from there, they bring the plans to Whistler, and he asks him, he's like, "What is this?" And this is what I was going to say earlier when we were talking about like Whistler. When you were saying where Whistler was being this vampire expert, he like knows about it. He knows what this crap is, and I'm thinking like, how do you know about this? Like. You were talking earlier about why you started hunting vampires, and it was because one of them subdued you and messed with your family, toyed with them, and then made you decide which one to eat first and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, like, what have you been doing, and how do you know what this is? Like, this is not knowledge that just anybody has. Like, Blade doesn't know about it, but you do. Granted, you're older than Blade. You found Blade as a baby, but when Blade was a baby, anyway, it's just kind of one of those things. I'm like, but then let's move on. And then I don't think it was very long after that Frost shows up in the daytime. How does he do this? The same way I do it. Sunblock.
And a whole lot of it. There's a scene that's actually kind of badass that they do too, where they take, I can't remember who it is, but they take one of the vampires that failed them. Yeah, one of the elders.
It's
like,
one of the guys who like hates Frost. He was the one that keeps belittling him in the scene.
And they bring him out to the beach, and all the vampires put on the sunscreen, like real thick sunscreen. You know what I mean? You can't have any of that cheap stuff. You got to have like 500 SPF or something like that. But it's kind of badass because they have him out there. Yeah, exactly. Just straight all over. And they take him out there, and he's got just like a blanket or a shawl or whatever over him, and then like they pull it off, and the sun's just barely coming up, and then all of a sudden it pops up all the way, and it just fries him, and he catches on fire right there as they all stand around and watch him burn. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
The sun hadn't even showed up yet, but it was like that kind of dusk, like pre-dusk, whatever, or not dusk, dawn. And he's just smoking. He's just like, and then they put on the motorcycle helmets. And
that's right. I forgot about the motorcycle.
They're all covered in leather and whatnot, and then poof, he goes up in flames. And I remember before that scene happens, he's laying in bed with his vampire lover. Excuse me, and I see, what you see is her just like rubbing this cream all over his face, and all I'm thinking is like, what the hell? Like, what is this? Like, what are you rubbing on this guy's face? And then of course it goes to the next. As soon as the next scene starts, I'm thinking, that's sunscreen. That's freaking sunscreen. It's such a silly idea, but it's
kind of go with it. But I will say it is one of those ones that is like, even that one scene where they just have Blade and Frost talking to each other, and of course Frost is like taking this little Asian girl hostage because why not? Yes. She was there. They're like in they're like in Chinatown or something like that because and
that's the other.
It's just still weird because you're like how's the sunscreen, but like his eyes aren't covered. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I started thinking about it, like there's other things on his body. It's like I would have thought it would just be better if he just had a stupid big hat on or something like that, and just looked like Michael Jackson going out for like the day, like would have been fine enough for me to believe.
But that was a silly, that was pretty silly, but I accept it. And here's why I accept it. Because I thought the scene of him throwing that Asian girl as hard as he could was just fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah, that's the second throw.
That's the second one I was talking about, where like somebody gets thrown super hard. Like, what the hell? So he's like, Blade goes to confront him, and like try to kill him, shoot him, whatever. And Frost is like, no, I don't think so. He's got this little Asian girl. I'll kill her. And Blade's just like super hardcore, like, I don't give a fuck about that girl, you know, and just like whips his Uzi out or Mac 10 and tries to spray him, you know, sprayed and pray and try to hit him, but he missed.
Wait, there's people everywhere.
Oh yeah. And then the Frost just chucks that girl like, you know, like
Throws her like a fastball at the baseball game, like literally.
So, like, this kind of things, you know, like a normal person would be like, oh my God, I'm sitting there like, this, it's hilarious. This girl like breaks a freaking hot dog cart or whatever that was.
Yeah, that's what breaks her fall.
And then you know, she's just okay, you know, and of course, Blade doesn't like rush to her aid. He's just like, oh, there he is again, you know, and tries to nail him again and missed it again. And then of course, like turns around. Oh, there's a bus that's going to hit that girl. I better go save her. And I love what my wife said. She's like, I love how there was like plenty of time for this bus to just like slow down or stop. You know? It's like, no way, we don't stop for nothing.
Yeah, and, I got a schedule to keep.
And like, I mean, come on, would you know, I'm thinking as the bus driver, that's not just a person driving down the road. You know, like, you got to be paying, you know, like, it's just like in Comcast when we were taught, you know, the whole defensive driving, you know, looking out at everything at all times, scanning the road, scanning the path ahead, you know, like, you know, this person had to have seen this person just nail a freaking food vendor, you know, like
explodes. Yeah, that vending thing goes everywhere. Like wood's flying, hot dogs are flying. Like it's not something you see every day.
Exactly, but you know, of course, that's just trying to place our reality in a comic book movie. But
this girl's got no injuries from this hot dog cart explosion.
No, none at all, not a scratch.
Yeah,
and well,
I'm pretty sure if this bus hit her, she wouldn't have got injured either. She would have just bounced off of it.
She probably just got up. She's like, "That's nothing. My parents beat me every day until I get those straight A's."
It's either that or the bus would have hit her, and the bus just crumples up against her body.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so he saves her and blah blah blah, and then but
he almost looks kind of pissy about it. Like you should have been standing there in front of the road.
Man, how could you let yourself be captured by Frost, you know? And I love that scene too, right before he grabs the girl. It's that kind of moment where like they want you to think like, oh, is he seeing things? You know, like Frost is like standing here and then the car drives by and then he's right there and then he's over here and then he's right there, you know, and then of course, you know, Blade's just standing there like he's lost in thought, you know, staring at the, 1,000-yard stare across a busy street. And then, of course, he's like, hey, it's me. Nice to finally meet you. And this is where he offers Blade, like, let's be pals. You know, we don't need to be enemies. Tries to tell him about, like, his plans and this and that. Explains that human are cattle and blah, blah, blah. And then Blade doesn't go for it. He says, you think I'm stupid? Like, no way, Jose. And that's when he, you know, uses the threat of, I'll kill this girl. And then that's when all that chaos ensues. And after that, he saves the girl and I guess goes to get whatever he was trying to get downtown because he left for something. I don't know, probably more garlic mace or whatever. Yeah. And then meanwhile, back at the their HQ,
the compound,
yeah, their refinery, granary, whatever, their condom factory. The who knows?
Yeah. Whatever Kris Kristofferson has invested in his whole life.
Exactly. The girl, she was working on her temporary cure that was gonna. Well, actually, no. It was gonna be a cure for her because she wasn't born a vampire. So it was like a virus reversal or whatever it was. And then I think at that time, it was actually before Blade left, I think that she was working on that. And then made him those little anti-vampire vials.
Well, because she's a hematologist, so like she, studies the blood, and that's where her character
blood,
comes
DNA,
in.
all that, yeah.
So
she's got to be convenient to the plot, convenient to him. Just so happened that the woman that he rescued, knows about how to mess with blood and DNA and all that. but yeah, so she's working on that crap and gives a cure for herself, and then uses the and then makes a little vial of anti-vampire crap, and you don't know exactly how it works. But anyway, so while Blade's saving little Asian girls from buses, that's when Frost and Quinn and the other guys, smother themselves in sunblock again and go snatch Karen and seemingly beat Whistler to crap and bite him and infect him.
Yeah,
Blade shows up.
They punish him. They really do. They go hardcore. I don't even know how they even found Blade's HQ. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't remember. They just
Frost explains, like, before they get there, like, he's like, I know everything about you, Blade. I know everything. Like, I know about your mom and this and that and Whistler and your bus size, But so I guess he just knew where it was. Then he shows up. He's like, "Oh, nice place. Took us forever to find it." And Juliana said, "I love how he just said, like, it took forever for him to find it, and Blade shows up like too late, and he knows exactly where it is." And I'm like, "Well, he had something to do. He had to go downtown and get some crap."
Yeah, he was going down Chinatown and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, he shows up. Karen's gone, and Whistler's like dying. He tells Blade to give him his gun, and he's like, "No way, I can save you or whatever." And he's like, "Nope, too late. You know it. I know it. You know it. I know it. Yellow Dog knows it." I don't know if you ever seen the Chevy Chase movie Funny Farm.
Oh yeah, it's been a long time, but I have seen that one.
I think of this all the time when I'm talking to somebody about something obvious. I'm like, "You know it. I know it. Yellow Dog knows it." But but yeah, so Blade, I guess he does leave him a gun.
Yeah.
And he takes whatever he needs and goes to goes to beat the crap out of Frost.
Takes his motorcycle out this time too.
Yeah.
Because he's got a sweet muscle car in the the beginning.
He does.
He's driving around in.
We did miss a part of the movie where Blade and Karen go to this place to it's one of the vampires' places. It's like a museum or something, and to go get like something. I don't really remember why they went there, but Quinn shows up and they're like, "Haha, it was a trap," and he takes a couple of Blade spikes because there was too many of these vampires for him to handle. Takes a couple of the spikes and nails them to the wall, and the silver spikes, and nails them to the wall. And you're thinking like, "Ooh, Blade's about to be, get his butt handed to him." But then Blade starts laughing. Quinn's like, "What's so funny?" And Whistler shows up. This
comes in
tank or whatever.
Comes in, just wrecks house.
Oh yeah. And then they get out of there, and then that's where. Oh, this was another hilarious scene. It's like in a subway, like right next to a subway. And Blade and Karen run away with Whistler. They're all standing like between, they're kind of like leaned up against the wall, like trying not to get hit by the train and the subway. And the bomb that they let off that killed a bunch of the vampires, it goes back and kind of shakes them a little bit. And Whistler gets like knocked into the train, like for what it seems, and you're like, "Oh shit," and Karen's like, "Oh no," and he's like, "Oh, sorry, he can take care of himself." And I'm like, that dude just got demolished by a train, and that's all you have to say? That's like your mentor. And
not a problem.
Like, no, he's good, he's fine, he's totally fine. It's only a train going 1,000 miles an hour in a confined space. And obviously he survives because then later on gets beat to crap. But anyway, so yeah, Blade jumps on his super sweet motorcycle and he's armed to the teeth and heads over to Frost headquarters. He's making making good headway there, and uses that vampire vial stuff. And what it does is it basically explodes them. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's pretty badass. I love that they start boiling up and everything. Kind of like mutated Resident Evil like, and then they finally just explode when they finally get too big.
Oh yeah, no, that was pretty sweet.
I think I can't remember. It might have been that subway one, but where Blade was pinned up, and the dude grabs Blade's sword, or he grabs his like katana.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, hey, this is pretty cool. And then like the spikes pop out and it just rips his whole like arm off. It was pretty badass.
That was pretty sweet. The and then
I like how everybody else just laughs at it.
oh yeah, exactly. You freaking idiot. What a stupid vampire. Yeah. So he starts kicking butt and explodes a couple of vampires with the little vials, and almost immediately he gets captured. Why? Because he stumbles into Frost's bedroom, whose very luxurious coffin opens up, and who is there? None other than Blade's mom. And turns out that she didn't. Well, I guess she died. Frost turned her, and he's like, I can't believe it. I what? And his Frost comes in there and some other vampires, and they subdue him because he's caught off guard. And it's revealed that Frost is the one who bit his mom. So he's kind of like Blade's strange vampire dad.
Yeah, in a weird way. Yeah.
And it was I don't know the origin of Blade's comic book version. Like, I don't know if his mom actually comes back like that. It's kind of I almost wish that wasn't in the movie, only because it was well, no, I guess I don't really care. I was expecting something else. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. But at the same time, it was I don't know. I guess the reason why I didn't like it that much is because Blade was so like ready to just destroy everything, and like
there's just once
curve again, armed to the teeth, and like he's a smart guy, he's got everything he needs to just wipe all these people out, and then his mom shows up and he turns into a baby, and I'm thinking, like, how does she even recognize him unless she's known about him the whole time? And like, and I guess he had the picture of her, but their picture doesn't look anything like her vampire self.
She looked like an afro in '67.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, how do you even recognize your mom immediately? And then how does she recognize you immediately unless she's known who you are as the Daywalker forever? But then,
But
they catch him.
Why has she not said anything since then? What was wrong with her then?
That's
terrible
what I'm
mother. Yeah,
exactly, bitch.
She just let old Kris Kristofferson like raise him the whole time.
Yeah. Man, give that guy a medal. They capture him, and Frost starts setting the stage for this prophecy to be going on,
the key thing of this whole prophecy is that they need the blood of Blade for this thing to work. No other vampire can. They need it to be the somebody who was born a vampire and not just turned a vampire. So that's why Blade's important. That's why they got him kind of trapped here, and they're gonna hook him up and drain his blood for this ritual.
Exactly. And Frost hooks up all the ancient vampires, the born vampires, sets them up on stage to be offered. That was a really cool scene, actually. Once that actually happened, the offering thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they put Blade in this, like, it was almost like a what's that device? Torture device from the Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
he puts him in what's almost like an Iron Maiden, but it's like a giant concrete block with two pieces and little blades where the wrists are. So he's like slowly bleeding out and feeding this ritual device or whatever. And once again, before they even put him in that thing, this was the last time where I'm like, oh, he's gonna kill Quinn, because Quinn won't shut up about this and that. Talks about his sword, how cool his sword is, and he's like, yeah, it is really cool. He's like, Quinn, hold your hands out. Who, mind you, Quinn has had both of his arms cut off by Blade, and by this time they've grown back. And he's standing. He's like, Quinn, hold your arms out. He's got Blade's sword, and he's like, are you serious? Like, they just came back, And he's like, just kidding.
Yeah, just when you thought he was just gonna rip him right back off. Nope, not at all.
And then I'm like, oh man, this guy actually, he's like a good friend.
He puts him with the idiot, yeah.
But yeah, and then right after that, that's when they put Blade in the horrible torture thing, and Karen, the they just dump her in a hole because she was just the ruse. They didn't really need her. They just were using her as bait to get Blade, who they really needed, and so they dump her in this the hole.
Garbage chute.
And that's where she comes across again her ex-boyfriend, or just guy that she dated once or twice, or who knows? Nobody knows.
And worked with in the same lab, That's
yes.
That's why you're not supposed to date your coworkers.
And he's like, oh, and Quinn, I think, mentioned this. He talking about turning people. He's like, sometimes they don't turn like us. Sometimes they become these disgusting creatures. Sometimes they turn into almost zombie-like, which is really cool because outside of Blade, outside of Marvel comics, when it comes to vampire lore, you can find so many different things about vampires. My wife used to do tabletop RPGs, not Dungeons and Dragons, but there's tons of different RPGs.
Oh yeah, there's like thousands of them.
Yeah, and she used to do, one of them was called Vampire Masquerade. And
because I remember there's a PC game back in the day, and that's how I always think of that one.
Okay, but yeah, she was telling me one day about all the different types of vampires there are, and it's pretty cool. But hearing Quinn talk about that, I'm like, it's actually kind of cool. It's cool that they use that element that, like, not all vampires are exactly the same, which most times in vampire movies they are. The way you see them, they're always depicted as the same freaking thing. Blade 2 goes into that even further about there being different vampires, which is really cool. But yeah, so he goes on, like, oh, sometimes they're nasty monsters, blah, blah, blah. Down the hole you go. And Karen gets up, and this weird, nasty guy is in there, and he looks like a ghoul. He looks gross, and it's awesome. You said it earlier, and I'll say it again. The costume design, the effects in this movie are fantastic. Not just, I would say not just for when this movie was made, but even for today's standards, I think they're really good. And it turns out this creepy, nasty guy turns out to be, lo and behold, her freaking ex-boyfriend, ex-lover, whatever. And he's kind of like, what I think's great is, he's still got some sort of cognizance to him, because he knows, oh, Karen, it's you. And she's so freaked out and disgusted by him that she just kicks him in the jaw and, like, beats him in the face, like, pretty quick brawl. Like, it was very one-sided. And
and then she just, like, climbs her way out of there with like a pick practically, and just pulls her way up.
Probably a bone or something.
Yeah, I think it was, because that's pretty much what it was. It was just like the dumping grounds for all, like, the crap vampires that were pretty much, old monster-like ones. And
she goes up and somehow finds Blade. It's times like these where I'm thinking, like, how'd you find him like that? Like, how'd you find him? How'd you find him so fast? And then I'm just thinking, like, well, this place, I don't think it's very big.
yeah. She finds him, but she pulls him out of the machine, and of course Blade's just weak because he's been practically drained
of his blood.
All of his blood and stuff. She goes like, you know what? There's only one thing you can do. You're gonna have to feed off of me. And Blade's like, I can't do that. I made a solemn vow. It's like, that doesn't matter anymore. You have to do this, And of course, he feeds off her for what feels like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's such a weird scene. I get it. Like, it's the way they shot it. It's clearly meant to show, like, oh, he's getting his power back, like, and he's also feeding, which he doesn't ever do. So it's like this, like, big event for Blade.
It's weird because it's like they make it big, but it's also kind of erotic and all kinds of.
I was gonna say it almost looks like a sex scene.
Yeah, but it's a feed scene.
Yeah, like he keeps doing. And but yeah, so that happens. He gets his strength back and he's ready to go. And then, of course, his mom shows up. But before
just to ruin it, just to ruin the moment.
Blade, go to your room.
Blade, what are you doing with that lady? I don't approve of her. And
I
don't care that she's a doctor.
I think it started. I think it started when he was feeding on Karen. But meanwhile, Frost is in that chamber, where Blade's blood has drained down these little like
canal things that create a design.
Canals, yeah, these little like canals that the blood is going down to basically drip onto all the ancient vampires, the born vampires that Frost has basically imprisoned. He's having them stand on each spot. The blood drips on their foreheads, and then Frost stands in the middle where Blade's blood drips on his forehead, and this whole like ritual commences.
And it's supposed to summon this ancient vampire spirit.
Yeah, like vampire
Frost,
blood god thing.
Yeah, that will fuse with Frost is like, I guess, the way that's going down.
And this is another thing. Earlier I mentioned how it's silly that, to me anyway, you got these born vampires who are like, have so much more life, if you will, over Frost, so much more wisdom and experience that you would think he'd be like a peon. And they'd be like, you're not doing this. Like, somebody kill him, you know? And yet here they all are imprisoned by him. And then he's got the balls to think that this vampire blood god thing is going to accept him. This half-breed, whiny baby vampire, instead of like a pure blood vampire. It's one of those things like, well, continue.
Go on. He said the right words, whatever.
Yeah, I said the words all right. That made me think about Ash Williams.
Yeah. Army of Darkness.
Raga, neck to. But so that's going on, and once it really starts going off, I think there was like lightning bolts that are like shoot down into their heads, and Frost is getting this power. Well, the elders like die basically, and their skin gets zapped away. There's and out of their human skeleton, these like vampire skeletons poof out of their heads and with their wings, and they're flying around the whole thing. And I thought that scene was really cool looking.
Yeah, it's pretty badass, because it's one of those ones where it's weird because this is New Line Cinema, and this is only 1998. Spawn was only 1997, and we all know what that CG looked like at that time period. And the funny thing too about that is that CG is literally done by Industrial Light and Magic. So I don't know, that must have been the new team over at George Lucas's place. But the CG in this is actually not too bad. You can tell it's CG, but for 90s CG, it actually looks pretty decent.
The movie Spawn was made a year earlier.
Yeah, 97.
That was Image Comics. I actually didn't know what publisher was that Spawn was out of.
Yeah, Image. The Spawn's kind of almost like the poster boy child for Image.
Huh, has DC acquired Image?
No, Image is still its own thing.
I see. I was just curious. It's interesting to me that Spawn ended up in Mortal Kombat. I thought maybe DC might have acquired Image, but
no, I think it was just a licensed out one. Kind of the same way with Terminator and all the other ones.
I'm surprised actually. Well, no, I'm not. I was gonna say no. It's since Blade's a Marvel character, it doesn't surprise me that he's not been in Mortal Kombat. But that'd be a really cool character to have in Mortal Kombat.
No, he actually feels like he would fit in a lot better than some other characters. So yeah.
More so than Ghostface.
Yeah.
Or even pre Warner Brothers mocap.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, the elders all die. Their vampire skeletons emerge, start flapping around the place. Really cool. I thought that was really cool because it really sets them apart from all the other turned vampires who, when they die, they just burn to a crisp and go away. Yeah. These elders die, and all of a sudden, well, this actually didn't happen with the guy that they burned by the sun. But whatever.
It's probably because of the ritual that's why they're.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
That skeleton things flying around.
But yeah, no, but it was pretty awesome. And I love how the Frost's lover like got super afraid and just like decides to run away from the whole thing. And she's one of the ones that's like hyping everybody up, like, come on, you people are worthless, you need to do something around here, you know.
Oh yeah.
Frost knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, we kind of forgot about that character because it's like that. There's this blonde chick who's always there. You know, got the slicked back hair. Looks like it's like almost if Hillary Clinton was a vampire.
She's the hype man.
Yeah,
the hype woman for Frost. Yeah. That's his girl. But and it's funny too because he's got her and he's also banging Blade's mom.
Yeah, exactly.
But kind of strange.
That's just to get at Blade, I guess. I don't know.
I guess so. Yeah. And then, going back to Blade, his mom shows up. It's kind of funny. It's like, how does she even know that that's happening? How does she know that Blade has just been feeding on her? What, does she just go to the room to make sure Blade was still encased in concrete? So she shows up and her and Blade fight, which who would think that he would not win, for one? I'm pretty sure she's not a trained martial artist, but hey, whatever. She loses. There's a moment where you think Blade is gonna fall to his emotions again, where she's like, Eric, would you really, I'm your mother, Eric, and he's just like gets real close, like, and kills her. and then him and Karen go out to the arena, if you will, and that's where all the chaos is just like, well, being chaotic.
Yeah.
Quinn. Oh man, it was freaking. It was very satisfying, but almost like, man, I expected just a little bit more for how persistent Quinn was at being alive this entire movie. He goes to Blade like, oh man, I'm gonna kill you, whatever. And Blade just takes a little steel line here and just whoosh, and decapitates him.
Yeah, that's it. Just there he goes.
And the Quinn.
Yeah, and finally gets taken down.
And then and then they fight the other vampire. He fights the other vampires, kills them all. Karen kills the white girl vampire that was Frost's lover, and then, gosh. Then he fights Frost.
Yeah, so it just leads up to Frost.
Frost has changed because now he's this vampire god. His eyes are red.
In the original version, he actually they put together this whole like he turned to some kind of CG like monster, and the test audiences didn't really like it, so like they kind of just switched him back to being okay, whatever. We'll put in this sweet sword fight scene instead, where Frost and Blade can fight each other out and whatnot, which probably is better. Yeah, I think it's just.
I'm like, where did he get that?
Yeah, I think it's just that '90s thing that's like, hey, we got some CG. Where do you want to use it at?
Yeah, they're like, man, I don't know. We just watched Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I think we got to hold off. Yeah,
we just made Spawn, and that ending cutscene looked like it, could have been on a PlayStation X disc.
It's kind of funny. I think the thing I dislike the most about this movie. It's a really easy, simple thing, and very like it is a very nitpicky thing because, again, I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I love this movie. I thought the CGI was good. I thought the effects were great. The makeup. Nothing I really didn't like about this movie. The things that were silly were also hilarious, and that's why I give it all a pass. But the thing that I dislike the most. And it's really not even a big deal. It's just if I really had to pick something, it would be Frost's teeth, his upper jaw. It's so, like when the scenes where he's talking, you can tell like it's so blatantly obvious that they're just like caps or something. It's just this like is kind of like his teeth are like it's very pronounced. It's kind of funny. But anyway, so they go through this fight, and Frost is like unkillable at this point. Before we go forward with that, we need to say about how before they imprison Blade in the concrete razor blade block, he rips those vampire anti-vampire vials off his arm, and he's like, oh, you want your potion, and he's like, oh, you should try it, you'll like it. And he's like, nah, and he throws them, and you
because he thinks it's what Blade
he
takes.
thinks it's his booster
fake
shots.
blood. Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, no thanks. And of course, like foreshadowing, if you've ever seen it, he's like, nah, and throws him. And my wife's like, that's got to be some of the strongest glass on the planet, that they don't break. But yeah, so
Kris Kristofferson put it together, so you know what? They probably was some good glass.
Exactly. So yeah, they're fighting. Blade cuts him in half. Frostbody goes up, and then it reattaches. And he's like, "What the heck?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can't kill me." And then he, they fight some more, and blah blah blah. Well, then Blade finally. What are down there? Conveniently, his vials of vampire poison. So he grabs them.
None of them broke.
No, yeah, all still there. Throws them at him like a ninja, and he's like, what? And he just like his body gets all like Albert Wesker at the end of his life,
Yep.
Just like deforms and then finally explodes, and that was the end of Frost. And I was once again, I was kind of like, how does he not recover from that? But what I mean, like, because he's a god now, and then like, but whatever. I mean,
he blew up. You know what? That's what happened.
Nothing survives an explosion.
Yeah.
And but yeah. So then, and then that was it. And then him and Karen go up to the top. She's like, "I love the sun. So nice to see the sun." And he gives her the speech and lecture about like, we're just getting started. We're we got more work to do. This is just the beginning. Blah blah blah, or whatever. That's not exactly what he said, but something along those lines.
Something along those lines, like we need a sequel.
Of course, yes, of course. And as we just watched, there was a cut scene where she's like, "Oh, you better get back on the clock," because and she looks over to a rooftop where, I'm sure Blade was just itching to throw her across to it. Who was standing there would be, I don't know how many people would really know this, but it was Morbius standing on that rooftop, and glad that they didn't really, I don't know if I'm glad, but I think it was a better decision to not include him, or to not keep that film or that scene, I mean, because the next film has nothing to do with Morbius.
Yeah. No, granted, who knows, the second one might have had something to do with Morbius if they would have kept it.
Sure, yeah, that's true.
So
but
there's
then,
that. Instead, we got a different ending in the real movie where he goes over to Moscow, instead, and just goes over there to, I don't know if that's supposed to be anybody important, just some
I don't think
Russian
so.
vampire. Yeah, You see, it's like, well, if it was a movie nowadays, you'd be like, oh shit, who's that supposed to be, from the Blade comic? But, nowadays, like this one's just like, there's just more vampires to kill,
Mm-hmm.
There's Russian ones out there too that are just walking around freely in Moscow.
I can't remember where the second one begins. I think it is in Moscow where the second one actually starts, but I could be wrong.
See, I can barely remember actually like the other Blades too. That's why I'm kind of glad we're going through these. It's just been so long. So I look forward to just rewatching Blade 2 and seeing where that starts up and where it goes to. But that's pretty much.
Oh, so Blade 2 is actually directed by Guillermo del
Toro. Yeah. Because that's the interesting thing about these movies is like they change directors. I almost want to say on every single one of them.
Yeah.
And this one's got Stephen Norrington, who really. He's only got a handful of movies, but the big one he's done other than this is he did The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Or at least that was a big movie for the time. I don't know if that's necessarily a big movie anymore, but in like 2003, it was something special. For the fact that I think it was also
awesome.
Sean Connery's last movie, or last major movie.
I think you're right. Yeah, I love that movie, and by the end of it, I thought for sure there was going to be a sequel, but
yeah,
there never was.
No, it's a cool movie, and as I said, it was really big for the moment. I never hear anybody talk about it anymore, so it kind of sort of faded away. It seemed like, but cool one. But that's literally all that dude's did. I'm kind of surprised. It's like he's a director of like 5 movies, or at least according to Wikipedia, he's a director of 5 movies.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that was a fun movie to get into. It definitely makes you look forward to the second one, yeah, all I can say is I wish they still made superhero movies like that.
I know. It's the thing. It's the bummer that we just don't really get like the good rated R stuff anymore. Now Deadpool is rated R, but Deadpool has the comedy, so it's kind of
different.
a different. It's a different one. And don't get me wrong, I like the Deadpool movies, but it's like there's only like a few of them that's like you have Blade, you got the Punisher ones, of course, and that's for the Marvel at least. A couple other ones that sort of fit in that similar category. They're comic books, but different stuff. But would be like 300 and the Watchmen.
Yeah.
Back just I just in Sin City as well too. So all the Frank Miller type stuff. But that those kind of went away. It's like they kind of stopped doing that type of superhero movie after literally about 2010.
Yeah, and I don't know why. Because I mean, I think there's. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say I feel like there'd be more of an audience for serious hero movies, but then again, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, also the 2010s was a dip, and this happens periodically throughout the years, where we go from a harder edge to a softer edge, and 2010s was definitely soft because a lot of movies became PG-13. One of the biggest examples, it's not superheroes, but it's Expendables 3, because the first two Expendables are very violent, and then all of a sudden the third one's a PG-13 one, and you're like, what? It's still a good movie, but it's just that thing, like, that was a perfect example. Just a lot of other movies kind of cut back on their violence and gore and their rated R-ness and so on. And then our superhero things, like, we didn't see Punisher anymore. We didn't see, you saw Punisher, the TV show, but I mean, like, in movies, you didn't see him anymore.
I bet I don't know how many people would even care, but I think a U.S. Agent movie would be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I like U.S. Agent.
Yeah, like he's like a. I feel like U.S. Agent was like if Punisher and Captain America became the same character.
Yeah, they kind of fused it. When I was a kid, I used to call him Black Captain America.
Yeah, when I first saw his character, it was just his face in a comic book that I had. I was like, "Isn't that just Captain America, but different?"
In a different suit. The first time I ever saw him was I was like one of these books that I bought for literally like a nickel. And it had U.S. Agent was slamming his hand down on like the counter and like yelling at full steam across the table at Iron Man, like practically calling him a bitch, but like in more 1980s terms. And I just remember like that was just how I read that kind, because when you're a kid you pick up one singular issue, and that one issue, wherever the hell it was in its arc, defined everything you knew. So I was like, well, U.S. Agent says that Iron Man's kind of a bitch, so I guess that must be true. Why would he not? And Iron Man flies off and he's all like sad and so on like that because he got yelled at, and War Machine's just standing there like, well, I try to. It might even be a War Machine in the arm. It might just be War Machine when he's just
Rhodey.
Iron Man's buddy. Yeah, he's just Rhodey without the armor. Because I don't think he even got that armor till like either the late 80s or the early 90s.
Yeah, that's actually the way I felt. I had an Iron Man comic. I no longer have. I don't have any comics except for a few Thor comics now. It was pretty cool. The Tony Stark was like bedridden or something, and Rhodes, War Machine had recruited like 5 different people to don a bunch of older Iron Man suits, and they went out to fight this villain, and they were all getting the crap beat out of them, and a couple of the suits were just turds and like were breaking down, and they at one point, like Tony Stark like gets out of bed. I think he was like hammered or something, and like just being a drunk recluse and like feeling sorry for himself about whatever. And finally he's like, gets word that they're all getting killed. So he like dons his suit again. He's like, oh, this is great. I feel great. It feels great to put on the suit, and he goes out there and War Machine's like, oh, you decided to show up now, you piece of crap. And from that day forward, I was like, I guess like Tony Stark's like kind of a piece of shit, and like I think a lot of characters have those moments. I think a lot of them have these moments where like they're just down on their luck, like they're they're just not feeling too good, and then they come back and blah blah blah, but then they get a slap of a dose of reality. And but yeah, you're exactly right. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that was this comic for me. It was my only Iron Man comic that I had.
So if, it kind of gave you your whole ideas and thoughts about how that goes, because nowadays it's like, I've read more Iron Man comics by this point, and I bet, like, a lot of times Iron Man comics are actually pretty darn cool ones. They're actually some that I really enjoy quite a bit, but
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of like, hopefully, I do think that everything's kind of like the wheels are turning and we're kind of going in a new direction. And I think movies are going to come back to being, we're going to get back to more of a rated R scene. Because really, I'll just say this year alone has actually been one of the strongest movie years, in my opinion, in a long time. And it's just been a great time for action films. There's just been good action movie like every couple of weeks, literally since like January, and a lot of rated R ones too. So I think we're kind of coming back to a good time period of like people want action, people want to see some blood and guts again.
Yeah, yeah.
And see, all that good fun stuff.
No, I agree. There's definitely still action movies that I want to see that I haven't seen yet that are getting on about a year old, I think. Gosh, you've probably seen it. I think it's called Sisu.
Yes, very good one. It's,
yeah,
because those are the ones that fall into pretty much like a John Wick like style movie.
Yeah,
and that's never a bad thing. They remind me of the kind of the same way that there used to be like Die Hard knockoffs, and they're always generally good.
And Sisu, when I saw a preview for it in the theaters, I knew right away it was going to be over the top and ridiculous, but I liked that. I like it when they're very upfront that this movie's not going to be realistic. It's just going to be off the wall, and sometimes that's all you want from an action film. And it doesn't need to be realistic. It just needs to be likable. You know?
It just needs to be fun. Yes, at the end of the day, like, I consider the fun factor as the most important thing, and that goes with anything. That can be movie, video game, book, yada, yada, yada.
Exactly.
I want to have just a good time. And I can have a good time, and it can actually be dark and depressing, and I can still have a good time if that sounds weird, but, like, that's the whole point is I want the fun factor to be there. And Blade gives that 100%. Blade is like, It's fun, it's action-packed, the violence is great, the story's cool. There might be some goofy stuff that you kind of question it, but you only question it, but you still go along with it in a weird way. It doesn't, nothing like stops the movie in its tracks or anything like that.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Yeah, no, Blade 1, original Blade, whatever you want to call it, just Blade.
Yeah, just
fantastic, Blade. Fantastic movie, man. Definitely glad we watched it, and I am looking forward to Blade 2, only because I've watched it a ton of times, and it's always a good time. This is such a benchmark for its own trilogy, and I think, like you said, it was kind of the forerunner of other films that were like it during the time that came after it, and also the beginning of the golden age of the superhero films. So yeah, I don't know.
Because in a sense, I really think that you probably could say the core golden age, give or take, is Blade all the way up to maybe even Endgame, and just all the movies that encapsulate in between there and so on. And I'm not saying every single one of them's, excellent, but, for the most part, there's a lot of just big moments. I mean, seeing X-Men in theaters, Spider-Man.
If I had to pick, the best superhero films from Blade to Endgame, Blade would be one. I would like to choose The Punisher with Tom Jane, only because I used to love that movie, but after watching it a handful of times, I've kind of dissected it, and I've found all kinds of stupid things about it. So I'm not going to choose that one. But Spider-Man, Sam Raimi, the first one.
Yeah, always a classic.
X-Men. I actually loved The Wolverine.
I do too. Wolverine Origins I actually like quite a bit too. I know,
even though it's got some things that people are upset about, it's still a great film.
Well, and the pacing's great in that movie. That movie has like amazing pacing. Like
you're never looking at your watch.
It's just always going somewhere on that movie. I thought that one was awesome. My favorite one that mostly always throws everybody a curveball when I tell them this is my all-time favorite superhero movie out of all of them is Daredevil, but the director's cut version of the Ben Affleck one. People mostly give me like a double take when I tell them they're like, the fucking Ben Affleck one? I'm like, yeah, I really like that Ben Affleck one.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that because I the last time I saw that movie was probably about 20 years ago.
Well, And if you do rewatch there's a director's
Director's cut.
cut, and it adds like a half an hour plus to the movie, so it really makes a difference, you know. But yeah, I think that one's fantastic.
Huh. Okay. I liked Deadpool a lot. I liked Deadpool when I was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
I found, it was one of those things where I had a comic, you know, randomly placed in the Deadpool timeline, and I thought he was cool. I thought he was kind of funny and cool and, you know, weird. And then, of course, his Deadpool movie. You know, even though I think the general consensus on the Deadpool films is that Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool in the Deadpool movies is way better than the X-Men Origins Deadpool. Sure, I agree with that. But sometimes I kind of feel like people give the Deadpool films this like god tier status, which I don't agree with. I think there's things about the films that, man, I mean, I love them, but I don't think they're like, you know, be all end all. I think the second Deadpool, I like the second Deadpool better than the first.
Second was my favorite one.
A lot. Apparently, Deadpool and Wolverine isn't exactly Deadpool 3, but I liked that movie a lot, but not exactly for like Deadpool reasons. I was laughing through the whole movie, genuinely, and I thought it was a great movie. I still like the second Deadpool more than that one, though. Because I think once again, Deadpool, the Deadpool Wolverine was a lot of fan service, which, again, I mean, it is what it is, and I think a lot of fans would do that after so many, I'll just say it, flops that had come before it from other franchises within Marvel. You know, I don't know if Thunderbolts came out after that or not.
No, Thunderbolts was literally just like 2 months ago.
Okay. There was one, another mutant
Eternals.
There's the Eternals, another mutant film that I can't remember what the name was.
New Mutants.
The New Mutants.
The one that was like the horror movie one.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. You know, the She-Hulk was lame.
That TV show.
Yeah, I watched a handful of the TV ones, but like some of them I just stopped as soon as I turned it on. But I actually really liked the Loki show. Is only, I think, 6 episodes, 6 or 8, whatever. I do wish that they didn't even do those. I wish they would just make like hour-long movies if that's what it came down to. Because
I kind of do too.
They're all just walking somewhere usually, you know, for 6 episodes. It's the same thing over and over. But yeah, not a lot. I can't really say that. And again, I know it's all my opinion, but still, I don't know what people are seeing in some of these things that are being put out. I'm like, how can you honestly say you enjoyed this? Like, I'd rather watch grass grow. Well, at least I'll get to see a nice sunrise and a nice sunset.
I have a theory that goes with why people like TV shows a lot of times. And the thing is that the average audience, when they watch an episode, let's just say it's an hour long, you know, not, you know, between that, there's maybe 10 minutes in the episode that is really good. That is really good, really standout-ish and so on. It's got a really maybe cool action scene. And that's what they remember. And they forget the 50 minutes where nothing really happened. Yeah. And see, I'm the other way around, that like I'll watch a TV show and I'll think about
everything that sucked.
I remember everything that sucks, and then it's like, yeah, there was a cool action scene, but they didn't make up for the rest of the time I was wasted, you know.
I tried to watch Andor, a Star Wars show that everyone and their mom seems to think is the best Star Wars thing known to man, and I'm like, dude, this show's boring. It's just boring. Well, it's not an action show. I'm like, I knew it was not an action show when I started watching it. I still think it's boring and stupid. Yeah. You know, and like I held out. Like I'm on like episode 6 or something of the first season. I don't know. And now there's a second season. And what I read was people saying the same thing. It's still boring, Andor. And I wanted to continue watching it because I saw a clip of a scene that if I was smart, I probably would just watch on YouTube. A scene with clones. And I'm a sucker for stormtroopers and clones. And I saw these clones. I'm like, oh, I want to see that. So I'm watching the show and I'm just like, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. This is a boring ass show that they could sum up if they wanted to. They did it once. It was called Rogue One. You know, they could do it again, but they won't.
Nope.
And God, you know, it's Anyway.
I've literally that's why in the last handful of years I've been the person I just say I kind of wrote TV off. I don't really like a whole lot of modern TV. I'm not saying that there can't be something good out there.
Oh, sure.
But mainly also I don't have time. I feel like I only have so much time to watch.
It does come down to time, yeah.
And I want to watch movies at the end of the day. That's what I like the most. But the way I also like to is like TV shows, in my opinion, were made much better back in the day. And a lot of times the examples I use is like X-Files, Xena, Young Indiana Jones, Miami Vice. Like
X-Files is my all-time favorite show.
Because in every single one of those episodes, there's always something happening. It changes up. You don't feel like this just weird continual thing.
The two worst FBI agents in history, and they never solved the case.
Exactly. and the thing, too, is even if there's a bad episode, like in olden days, it's like, well, whatever, that plot's done. You're on to a brand new one like by the time the next episode is.
Yeah.
Where nowadays, it's like, if you don't like the plot or the characters, it's like, well, guess what? That's the entire season.
God.
You better suck that dick. Yeah, so as I said, like, I've just come to the conclusion that, like, unless it's and even animation's kind of getting kind of ruined too, because there's been a lot of animated shows that come out nowadays, and they make them like in the same way that live action stuff is, and I can't even get behind those either. So I'm almost afraid to watch animation anymore either. I'm just, I'm just gonna be like one of those people. I'm like 2000s and back. I don't need to know anything past that point. Yeah,
no, I'm right there with you.
But speaking of in the 2000s though, on TV, there is a Blade TV show actually.
Oh, really?
I have the whole season set on. It's like 13 episodes or something like that.
It just clicked. I'm kind of remembering it now.
Yeah, and it actually was pretty decent. I mean, of course, it's the violence is toned down for like TV 14, which
sure.
I mean that doesn't bother me because I know where it's being shown at. But I remember watching some of it back then. I was like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty decent. I mean, I haven't watched it probably since the 2000s. But I thought that was kind of cool. There's also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's a Blade anime because there was that time period in about the late 2000s where they had all these anime versions of Marvel characters. So there's an X-Men one. The X-Men one's pretty good. There's a Wolverine one, which sadly is kind of goofy, not that good. And then there's a Blade one. The Blade one I remember being probably the best one of them all. It's been a moment since I watched that, but I remember that being kind of cool. So maybe if we get to it, we can find that Blade anime too at the very end.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because it's a movie. I don't think it's a TV show. I want to say it's a full-on movie, but yeah, there was a cool time period when they used to utilize Blade a lot more, and sadly he's been pushed to the background. But I don't know. Who knows? There's always hoping there'll be some new Blade stuff soon. We had the cameo in Wolverine and Deadpool, and I think he actually has a new comic book series out now. So at least that's something. At least they're testing the waters. But yeah, that's Blade. If you haven't seen this movie or it's been a long time, you might as well go out of your way to check it out because it's damn good. I don't know where you can watch it at streaming. I pulled up my Blu-ray copy, but
yeah, I rented it.
Yeah,
I don't
Amazon. Well, because I looked at it just out of curiosity, and it wasn't on Disney. But I've noticed Disney's lost a lot of their stuff in recent
times. They have. I looked for it on several platforms before I gave up and just decided to rent it on Amazon for $4.
Yeah, it's good enough.
It's worth it to me.
Yeah, I hate to sort of say it, like anything that's $5 or less nowadays, it's like it's literally like back in the day. It's like putting a quarter in an arcade machine. It's like
exactly.
You know what I mean? And you know how many times you put a couple quarters in a machine and then you died like in under a minute. And you go, huh? Oh, okay. So I felt like I've got I get a lot more bang out of my buck for a rental, but yeah, we're gonna come back with more Blade stuff. We're gonna go to Blade 2 next, and then Blade 3, and then see where we go from there. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited because I've been wanting to watch these movies again for a good long while. And going back just seeing Blade 1 just reminds me how much fun it is, how great it is, everything about it. It's literally this for Wesley Snipes. I was thinking about it. It's like his Rambo or his Terminator, realistically. This character is so him, know. But yeah, other than that, you can check out all the other Old Man Orange podcasts on YouTube and Spotify. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And don't be a blood-sucking vampire, or else Blade will kill you.
Exactly. So till then, we'll see you guys some other time, and we are out of here.